Oh yeah. Let me do that.
Remember that your locals are merely backups now.
Yeah, sometimes my internet is slow, so it's handy. I think it's come in handy like twice at this point.
Yeah, I remember the earlier this year you had one episode where it was pretty. Maybe it was the New
Yes,
Year's show.
choppy. Yeah,
New
because I
Year's
was
Day.
in an apartment in the mission, and like
Right.
Wi-Fi SF is horrible. Yeah.
Okay, well, we are live now. Hello, world. Let me go ahead and. Our, our live image is up is off now because it has Amel's face on it. Oh well. What are you gonna do? Amel will not be making it. She had construction overlap.
That sucks.
Hmm.
I guess the downsides of owning a house.
There's never construction in the apartments.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, maybe when you rent, you have less control.
Less control, yeah. That's why I was like, "It's your house,
Yeah,
Amel. Just tell the people to be quiet for an hour." But
that's
apparently, they
true. Yeah, that's
apparently
true.
they've disconnected their internet, and she was on her phone, tethered or
Hardwired.
something.
Yeah.
So
I also have construction going on right now, but it shouldn't be uh, an issue on this. I'm
all
getting a
good.
backsplash installed.
Nice.
In your kitchen.
Hmm.
I saw your whole like Twitter update on your kitchen adventures.
We're coming out of the 90s.
Nice.
Putting out a tweet.
It looks really cool though.
Thank you.
Backsplash. That's gonna be like one of the last things you do. So you must be almost done.
We are. Then we just need a painter to come back and paint. We installed the baseboards this last weekend, and we're getting an electrician to remove our outdated lighting and put in like can lights and modern
Ooh.
lighting. And then it'll be. Oh, and then we have to paint the doors or replace the doors with white doors.
Okay. Robert wants to know who is against. Who is against what? Who's against the premise or who's against SPAs? I guess.
Just ask THH. uh,
You don't have to
Looking
ask
for
THH for his opinion. He will provide it.
yeah, unsolicited,
Mhm.
completely unsolicited.
Hey, Beardicus, always hopping in to say hi and then always hopping out to say goodbye. But I always like to mention Beardicus because I like to say his handle. It's just fun. Beardicus. Did any of y'all play the Kid Icarus game when you were kids? I guess we were
I
kids
have
at
no
different
idea what
times.
that is.
Kid Icarus?
Yeah, I don't know what
Let me
this
let me link
is.
slap you real quick. Kid Icarus. A love with love. Oh, a link slap with love into the chat goes Kid Icarus. Boom.
Oh yeah, I did not play
That
this.
was an early Nintendo game.
Yeah.
Is that like from Smash Bros?
Is it from Smash Bros?
Nintendo.
I'm trying to sound out
Are
of
you
touch.
trolling? I'm not sure if Kid Icarus has ever been in a competitor in Smash Bros. Or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was. He's got a cool bow. He's like a what do you call him? A cherub. KBall doesn't play video games, so he's not
really,
even
no.
moving his head. I already knew that. All right, what's
Apologize.
stopping us?
I'm looking back for references from our previous Yep Nopes because I might
He's
wanna.
actually studying. This is you guys are in trouble.
I know.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I should get the list
No
of them
way.
because I'll mention it.
I've got Divya to carry me, so
That's true.
Oh
She's a
man.
pro. She's a pro. Let it be resolved that Divya actually did debate.
The best way to debate is to argue definitions. That's usually
Don't give away the pro
I've done
tips
enough.
right now.
I feel like I've done enough yup nopes with like all of you that you
Yeah.
all know my strategy
We all see it
at this
coming.
point. Yeah.
Well, you all have been on enough yep nopes that you know at the end I just declare myself the winner anyways. So
This is true.
as moderator. Yeah, so this is the 1, 2, 3, 4. This is our 5th one. But it's been like over a year since we've done it, so I couldn't think of any good premises for a while when I found one. All right, everybody ready to rock? Let me find. I need a buzzer noise. I've got. What do I have here before we start? Some way to actually like ding when your time is
You
up.
could also use your voice.
Ding. I just feel rude, like I'm like yelling at you. Like, "Time's up." Let's see real quick.
You don't have to ding. You can say something else.
Buzz. There's
Yeah, you
buzz.
can make up your own
Okay.
ding sound.
You've convinced me. Plus, there's no buzzers in the soundboard right now. So
Yeah,
I
get
will-
creative with it, you know.
Like, no.
Just use the
That's only when
bone
Divya
skull.
goes.
What?
Oh, yeah.
That's a great
That's a
idea.
good
All right,
one.
let me grab that one.
That is a good one.
Is it in the soundboard already? Oh, it's cool.
Should be.
Oh, gosh. Hold tight, everybody. This is very important. There we go. I just found it. Dragging it in. Drag and drop for the win. Chris. Did you guys hear that? I didn't hear it. Uh-oh. Bug. It's there, but when I click it, nothing happens. How about this one? Now none of them are making noises. I actually think my drag and drop ruined the UI. It did. Doggone it. It says beta right there on the media board. This is why. Can you guys hear it right now? Because I cannot. But I'm playing a song.
I can't hear it.
Do you have it set to live?
I do. Like, even I can't hear. Let me go to preview and then back to live real quick. Hold tight, folks. Oh, you know what? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I pulled the volume knob all the way to the bottom. No wonder I couldn't hear it. I'm like, it's playing. I'm clearly not cut out for this. How about this?
I don't like jokes.
I don't like jokes. Yeah.
What?
There we go. Got it?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Well, that will be our sound. And I'll say that up top. Okay, enough of all that. Let's get the intro going here. Hello. Jerod here, your internet friend. We are back for another awesome JS party. We've lined up a debate episode. Now, we've been doing debates off and on over the years, but we haven't done one for a very long time, and that's because we didn't have a great premise to debate until recurring guest Chris Ferdinandi provided one on his blog when he wrote back in February that SPAs, that single page apps, were a mistake. So I hopped on that real quick and decided, ooh, that sounds like a premise that we could debate. And I wanted to be more bombastic, and so I added the word big. And so the debate we're going to have today, the premise is, were SPAs a big mistake? And I'm sure Divya will hop on that jargon and decide exactly what big means. Speaking of Divya, she's joining us today. What's up, Divya?
Hey, how's it going?
You got your debate shoes on?
I'm wearing socks. I got my debate socks on.
Okay, right on.
No shoes in the house.
I hope those work just as well. And Divya's teammate today will be Nick Nisi. What's up, Nick?
Hoi hoi. I'm very excited, but I was ready to debate spas, like as in a
Like a
place
day
where
spa?
you go for a day. Yeah.
There's
That
no way
they're-
a spa could be a mistake.
Never a
though.
mistake.
It's always the
How
right
How would you
choice.
argue that they're a mistake?
They're germ ridden.
Okay.
Oh,
know.
fair.
Fair. Expensive.
Expensive, yeah.
Strangers touching your body in places. I don't know. It could be a mistake.
Yep,
You can get there and
yep.
think, why did I do this?
Now all of my arguments are just going to be like double entendres.
Okay, we'll hold you to that. Well, Team Divya and Nick will be facing off against Team KBall and Amel, only without Amel because construction problems at Mel's house. KBall, you're representing all by yourself. How are you going to do?
Well, you know what I was thinking I would do is not just channel Amel, but I'm going to channel the ghosts of all the JS Party participants
Past.
who aren't here today. We have some
Okay.
folks who have done amazing jobs in previous Yep Nope episodes, and I'm going to see if I can dig up some callbacks and represent all of our panelists as Yep Nopes.
Okay.
And especially because we're on Nope, and we got a lot of cynics on JS Party. Like Nope is definitely a place to pull from the past.
That's right. So, to explain a little bit how we do this, we call these episodes Yep Nope, which is a nod to former JS Party panelist Alex Sexton's yepnope.js, which was a cool library back in the day for determining whether or not the browser had certain features. I think it was a feature detection aid, and we use that to debate whether or not a premise is true. So the question today, as I said, is were SPAs, not SPAs, let's call them SPAs for simplicity's sake today, were SPAs a big mistake? And so one team is Team Yup, agreeing with that, answering in the affirmative, I should say, and the other team is Team Nope. And so Nick and Divya will be arguing that SPAs indeed were a big mistake, and KBall plus the ghosts of JS Party Past. KBall's trying to make this real hard on himself today. We'll be arguing that SPAs were not a big mistake. Now, we do this kind of formal debate style. So we will have a timer. I'm your moderator. I will be watching the time. I will be enforcing time constraints. And when your time is up, we will channel Chris Hiller, and he will say,
What?
because we couldn't find a buzzer in our soundboard. So when you hear,
What?
your time is officially over, and you must cede the floor. Any questions from the panelists? Old pros. Okay. Well, ladies first. We will start with Divya. And I will get my timer out here. Give me a moment.
Cool.
You will have 2 minutes. Ooh, actually, I could just leave my old car horn as well, which would be a good one, but we'll see what happens with that. You'll have 2 minutes to make your case, and you can start right now.
Well, first, if we were to talk about single-page applications, it's worth talking about the definition of what they are, which is single-page apps are generally single HTML pages. They allow full interactions without any page refreshes, because the idea is that you're loading the entire app onto a user device, and the user is just going to work within that frame or within that particular HTML page, and then I guess all the data is already fetched more or less, and then new data is just fetched additionally as needed. But the idea is that everything is loaded, so it allows for a single experience. The problem and the downsides, of course, you can guess is, well, actually, first I'll kind of like talk about the corollary to that. So the single page apps, which is a single HTML page, the opposite of that is multi-page apps, where you have multiple pages. So every time you do a page, like you try to go back or forward, that is it's really a full page refresh, because you're going back to the server, requesting something, and then it loads data and so on. And so those are the two differences that you work with, single page apps versus multi-page apps. You can kind of guess the obvious problem to this, which is that single page apps are incredibly not performant in that sense because you're loading an entire web page or web app. I think we've had this discussion before. You're loading this entire application, and sometimes the user won't even access all pages. They're not going to use the entirety of that particular app. And so you're wasting a lot of space, and the initial load time is so huge because you're loading assets. There's a lot of like whatever pages, data, and so the initial load is a problem, and that can already impede user experience because the argument oftentimes is that you can make user experiences really nice on single page apps. Performance.
Sorry, your time is up. Good job, Divya. You actually referenced one of our previous Nopes, which was episode 162. Are web apps fundamentally different than websites? So you want to go back.
I needed to one up KBall because I knew he was going to start bringing in other shit. I was like, if he's going to bring in
KBall made the classic mistake, which is he gave his plan out before the thing started. You got to keep it to yourself. It's like every evil genius ruins it when he gives the monologue at the end. Anyways, I'm stalling. KBall, you are
Or I could be
up.
just giving enough rope for y'all to hang yourselves, trying to struggle to pull things in.
We
We're going to
shall see.
start. Are you timing me? Are you ready?
Go.
All right, I'm going to start as myself and just highlight to y'all that single page apps, and I'm going to call them spas because, they are as lovely and
I said don't do that.
luxurious as a spa that you might go to. Spas are what make it possible to create rich browser-based applications that feel like native applications. So once the application is rendered, it feels much more responsive. Navigation no longer has to go back to the server. You don't get these long pauses as you're clicking through things. If the new page doesn't require any new data to be loaded, the client can essentially render it instantly. And even if more data is required, it's just an API call, much less data flowing over the network, so much faster. Spas also make it much easier on developers to create those intricate user experiences and interactions. The whole application is living within JavaScript, so manipulating it in fine detail based on user interaction is just so much easier to implement. So, if you create a complex UI, creating it with a client-side framework like React, Angular, Vue, knowing that you can control the whole entire experience, it's just an order of magnitude easier than trying to create the same level of interactivity on top of some sort of server-rendered page, passing things back and forth. So, you can use all these straw men that you want, throw things out, like there's no need to make a blog, a spa, all this other stuff. But the question is not, is there ever a case against a spa for a particular use case? Of course there's some cases, right? If I'm just throwing words on a page and I don't care, don't use the spa. Sure, fine. But the question is, were spas a big mistake? Spas are what are taking the web browser as a platform and turning it from just a document reading engine to something where you can have genuine interactive applications on par with a native application. I rest
Very
my
good.
opening statement.
You have 10 more seconds, but we'll just give you a complimentary.
What?
Okay, KBall coming in with the words per minute. Very nice. Nick, you don't talk quite that fast, but yet you still have the exact amount of minutes that KBall has. He ended early. Let's see how you do. It's your turn, Nick. Take it away.
All right. Well, first off, let's start in the way that Divya started, with some definitions. If we look at the words that make up single page app, the first one is single. And as we all know, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So you're already off at a disadvantage there. So then you just have page apps. And you know what that is? That's multi-page apps. So we can just continue on going from there. We all know as, JS party. JS is where you party. It's not what you build apps with. And, to get a little more serious, JS breaks, like when you start building a single page app, you're building everything from scratch. You're breaking the back button by default. You're breaking the URL by default. Those things don't work. And to get those to consistently work is entirely up to every single development team that's doing it themselves. And so it's just, you're just starting off at a disadvantage. Your Lighthouse scores are immediately terrible, and you don't have a good experience for your users because they're expecting a standard level of accessibility, a standard way to interact with things, and it's up to every single development team to pick the right implementation or to do it themselves to get it done in that way. And so if you think about it, look at your phone. Take out your phone. How many apps do you have on that phone? I bet you don't have a whole lot of bookmarks to apps. You have a lot of apps because native apps were right. Maybe Apple was right about that. And, single page is not the way to go. It doesn't matter that Apple is the one intentionally crippling those. Like, it is just a bad experience, and maybe they're right. And that is all I have. Oh wait, no. I have one more. What would Jerod do? We all know that Jerod wins every debate. What would Jerod do? Jerod wouldn't build a single page app. So therefore, I rest my case that is the wrong way to do it.
What?
Well, I will say that your last point was spectacular. And I want to go back real quick and recover your first point, which was also spectacular, but you said it so fast, I'm not sure I tracked. I think you said something like 2 is 1 and 1 is none. What was this?
Exactly.
That's the point?
You never heard that saying?
That was amazing.
That was awesome. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Okay. Well, I generally do win these debates, but right now, I'm not going to lie, Nick is winning. But we'll see what happens. KBall, we now turn to you plus JS Party panelist past or whatever shtick you have going on next. You have 2 minutes to do whatever it is that you're about to do.
All right. Well, Nick, you're trying to steal thunder as well by referencing Chris Ferdinandi and his whole thing about having to reinvent browser capabilities. But I'm going to call out to a different JS Party guest, Lori Voss, who highlighted that the history of change, the browser moves slowly. It has so many different things, but what happens to create progress is there will be user land changes where libraries implement new capabilities, and those that work really well end up transcending their user land area and are rising up to the browser level. Now, the first version that was highlighted in that conversation was jQuery, which doesn't stand here, but the next one that he was proposing would stand out was React and this approach to the world that is what enabled SPAs to occur. So I think you're referencing the wrong JS Party guests. But I also want to call out, y'all are trying to make yourself seem so official by starting from definitions and playing with these like logical puzzles, but I'm going to call out to Firas and appeal to authority. I'm going to read some quotes. So, quotes from the first result to the Google search, why single page apps are amazing. I'm going to read you these quotes. SPA is fast, as most resources, HTML, CSS scripts, are only loaded once throughout the lifespan of application. We don't use the or anything here in this quote. SPA is fast. Next, the development, there's a the, is simplified and streamlined. There is no need to write code to render pages on the server. It's much easier to get started because you can usually kick off development from a file without using any server at all. SPAs are easy to debug with Chrome.
Okay.
I'm just reading quotes here. This is the authority
I
involved.
can tell.
Top of Google. As you can
Question
monitor
authority.
network operations, investigate page elements and data associated with it. And finally, it's easier to make a mobile application because the developer can reuse the same backend code for web application and native mobile application.
What?
It sure
Is that a
sounds
comment
like you're...
on my quotes or am I out of time?
That was both a buzzer and a commentary on what are you talking about. Okay.
It sure sounds like your partner is Horse.js, where you're just taking snippets out of context.
Oh, I forgot Horse.js. Okay, I got to go find
You can't
Horse.js.
forget
Spa.
Horse.js.
Oh
We have,
my god.
if you need some
Yeah.
Horse.js sounds, I can actually bring them in because I've been making them for years. Okay. This ends round 1. So far, it's a no-brainer. I'm currently in first, Nick in second, KBall in fourth, and the ghost of JS Party panelist past is in last. So,
What about Divya?
well, she's with Nick. Or third. I don't know.
Same
I forgot.
team. Same
Yeah,
team.
same team. So we'll see what happens in round 2. It's going to be the rapid fire round. We'll have half as much time and hopefully 100% less reading quotes. We'll find out what happens right after this break. All right. That was awesome. Break time. I actually should have brought my Horse.js stuff into this. Let's see if I have any good ones for this. That can actually help you, KBall, real quick. I have 40 Horse.js sounds here. No, that one's not going to help. This one might be good. I don't know if I can drag AIFFs into the soundboard. Let's find out. I already broke it once. No, she can't play it. Or she. I said she because that was a Horse.js female voice. This board can't play that sound. So scratch that. All right. Are you guys prepared for round 2? We will start with... I don't know what we're going to do. I'll think of it on the fly. I was going to start with Divya again, but then I was like, I think you should switch to the other team to start.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
makes sense. Totally. Then we'll go to Divya next. All right.
Okay.
We are back. Round 2 of Yep Nope. So far, the scoring. Team Yep, that's Nick and Divya with 10 points. Team Nope with 0. KBall. This is
Right, you gotta tell me
Yeah,
the rules
where-
of the game here. How
How's
do
the
I score
points?
points?
I suggest a different strategy than the one you're currently taking. No, I'm just giving you a hard time. There's no points. I'm just messing with you. We're going to let you go first, so hopefully you can score some points in this round. But it's a rapid fire, 1 minute. And we encourage in this round more crosstalk between debaters versus the previous round where you must remain silent. So feel free to interact a little bit, but you're also stuck in your 1 minute. KBall, go.
All right, so I am going to highlight that my counterparts here are clearly hypocritical because Nick just did an entire episode on the application he wrote for our
Nice.
JS Party game show that is writing a spa. In fact, he wrote a spa and then he rewrote a spa and has implemented it in
points.
such a way that
He
it's
scored points.
only writable as a spa. So I think we have a little bit of hypocrisy going on Team Yep over there.
Your response, Nick.
You know, the next rewrite will be into multiple pages, a single page per question.
I think there's a quote: "You have to know your enemies better than your friends." So, I think that's what's happening here. Clearly, Nick dislikes single-page apps, but decided to build a single-page app because of how terrible it is. He needed to prove how terrible it is.
It sounds to me
Exactly.
like you are highlighting that I know my enemies better than my friends here because my attack was so effective there relative to when I tried to bring in the ghosts who are my allies.
Okay, good response. Divya, the floor is yours. You have 1 minute.
So one of the arguments that were brought up was the idea of building single-page apps so that you have a native-like experience. And I call issue to that mainly because the issue that single-page apps brings is that they try to make the web native, which causes the chasm between native and web. They are not the same platform. And the argument should hold that you build for the platform. You're building based on the functionality and the expectations of that platform. And so when you're building an application for the web, you should not build it for native-like functionality because we want to use the platform. The platform is built for a specific purpose. They have certain user expectations on how things work, like the back button, like links, like sharing browser history, and so on. And a lot of single-page apps break that because there's no good way of link sharing. There's no good way of going, the back button is essentially custom. And so the problem here is that now you have this need for people to redo how browsers do things, which then leads to a lot of fracturing of how applications work. User experience are not always the same across different applications, which
What?
causes issues over what people expect.
KBall,
Is
your
that the end?
response.
All right,
Yes.
I'm going to call out to Amal here. So she stated that she believes that engineers are really into zombies and impending death by zombies. And I will say that sounds to me like a zombie argument. You're really just saying, get off my lawn here. Let me use the tools I have, not focus on the user problems and how I solve them. Spas are broken because my spa is broken. I don't know how to implement and tie into router functionality and the APIs the browser supplies to allow JavaScript to hook into history and do other things. You can't tell me that spas are broken because your spa is broken. I can build you a broken multi-page app. That ain't hard.
We know.
Isn't that what you do at your day job? Nick.
All right. So one of your arguments, KBall, was that browsers give you all of this stuff for free. Well, guess what? When you have multi-pages, you just get more of it for free because you get it on each page. And did you hear that pause there? That was my argument reloading, just like my pages.
Hold on a second.
Let's just think about,
Interjection, moderator interjection. Nick, where is your argument stored?
it's stored on the server. It's stored in the cloud.
What kind of application is this?
It's an I don't know. I don't know.
So that stuttering, that sense that it's hard to load the next thing, that's what happens when it's stored on multiple
doesn't wanna
pages.
answer.
You got to
He
get it
doesn't wanna
all
answer.
together so you can load it as one. Centralized state management, man.
Okay, Nick, continue.
All right. So let's think about how we implement these single page apps if we were to do such a thing. It starts with this thing called asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Who uses XML? It's right in the name. Like, this is old news, old tech. We don't do that anymore. We have a cloud and we deliver everything directly from the cloud every time. And the browser updates it, and it's fast enough to update each time and have everything all right there.
What?
In the chat, Robert Hall posted a Hacker News comment,
What?
which is never wrong.
Sorry, you have to hold that for your next thing. KBall, would you like to respond to Nick, or would you like to start something fresh?
You know, I'm going to keep going with his quote. The Hacker News comment was, "The web is a mistake." Y'all are trying to tell me that, oh, the original design of the web is perfect and we should never build beyond it. But
We never said it was
calling out to us-
perfect. No, we never said it. There was no indication of saying that it was
build
perfect.
For the
We said build for the
Don't build
platform.
things that the platform doesn't natively give.
No, you can
Don't
build
ever
for the
go
pla-
beyond
Document reader.
that box. Who are
You
we
can build
building
for the platform and still push for its development. Like,
who
you
are
can
we
build
building
for the
for here?
platform. You're building for the users of the platform.
Who have the users who have user problems.
They
And
have
so if
user
the-
problems because single page apps have reused how the browser works, and therefore people have disjointed
No,
experiences.
we started with
and
building an
therefore-
application for them, right? So they had some problem before we have a single page app or a multiple page app. They have some problem we're trying to solve, right? So shouldn't we build the solution that best
What is
solves
that problem?
regardless
Please
of whether
define
or
that
not?
problem.
Well, I think it varies a lot. So a problem I'm typically doing, let's see, how about collaboration on a design in Figma? Oh, single page application. How about I'm
They have a
searching
desktop app.
for
It's
something
much
on
better
Google?
experience.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
that
now a
doesn't
single
have
page
to be-
application too. Oh, how about I'm trying to understand what's going on with my friends on Facebook? Oh,
What?
single page application too.
What?
You're out of time, sir. I will have order. Divya. Please respond to this man.
Respond. Wait, I thought we were like all responding.
I know, I just wanted order, and now I want you to keep going.
Apparently, I have to argue
I
for.
felt like I had to say something.
That's fair. Apparently, I have to argue for Java and Flash now.
Yeah,
Bring
you
it
backed yourself
back.
into a little bit of a corner there.
I mean, there's ways that you can use the platform. The platform has been moving in like a very solid direction in general. Like, now we have a lot of different tools. Like, you have Houdini, where you can change a lot of how CSS works. You can add selectors of your own. You can add styles as and when you like. It adds a lot of powerful features. And so when you build for the web, you're really wanting the web to be pushed forward and to champion that effort. I think the argument that you build a separate thing in the interest of the web moving and catching up is sort of like not investing in what you on the infrastructure of the web. You're sort of going off in a corner and building a suburb, hoping the city would build up and be better so that you can move away from the suburb, even though you've tried to build this idyllic little town outside of a space where the infrastructure is very good to hold people. And so
I'm
would say,
I'm gonna jump in here real quick because I have a different example that this strikes me as. So if y'all ever work with designers who are a little overloaded, you may have discovered that if you're asking for a design for a new feature, it may never happen. The best way to get a designer to give you a beautiful design for a new feature is you build an ugly version of that feature and threaten to ship it. or even do ship it. Once it's in production, the designer looks at that and says, hey, that's ugly. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to clean that up. That's exactly what spas are doing here, right? The browser is progressing because the people who are responsible for building the browser said, holy smokes, what we're providing here is clearly not sufficient because people are building all this stuff around it. You know, if spas weren't being built, would they have bothered to build all those APIs to enable them to be built well? No.
Nick, your
That
response.
argument is very interesting, and I take a lot of issue with it, partially because you're creating problems in order, like you're creating extra
sounds
problems
passive-aggressive, right?
as a way of saying like, oh, these problems help make the solution make sense. It's sort of like the argument people have whenever they decide to drive more cars, and they're like, we should subsidize cars and gas because then you do that more, and then it causes like people not to have infrastructure for public transit, and then you're like, well, we're doing this because public transit sucks, and hopefully because there are more traffic jams, the city will decide to put more money in public transit. You're not investing in the infrastructure, so how would you want people to be incentivized to make it better? It doesn't work.
Well, I wouldn't say that you should only do spas and never invest in the infrastructure. You should do both. However, I will highlight that change never happens when the people in power are comfortable. The browsers would love to stop feature development. If everybody would use their stuff and they don't have to do more features, like, why keep investing? Why maintain these expensive browser engineers and all of this? They keep investing in improving things because we keep pushing the bar for them.
They keep investing to handle all of the edge cases of all of the spa applications and frameworks that are being built around them instead of just using the tools that are given to you by the browser.
Precisely. You've made my point. If we weren't pushing the boundaries, they wouldn't invest.
No,
and we'd
I
be
think-
back in
I think
browser
the-
stagnation.
But the web could have,
developers-
I could argue that the web could have been really interesting had spas not existed, because then we'd be building experiences that push the web forward and makes experiences within that sort of linear and make sense. But now with single page apps, because they've brought in a lot of design changes and certain expectations, browsers have had to follow suit to sort of like meet those expectations, and so they've had to sort of derail their own plans in order to build for what people have been used to because of single page apps. So can you imagine what the web could have been like? We could have had better forms by now.
We could have had so much more if we didn't have to support all of this JavaScript. But that's the thing. Spas just proliferate more JavaScript, which makes them have to support more backwards compatible JavaScript. What the heck is flat? What is a flat map? We could have, I don't even remember what they're originally called. Is it sploosh? I don't know. But we could have had those.
Smoosh,
those
right?
names.
That's
Smoosh,
really
yeah.
good point, Nick.
Oh, dear.
If we weren't always trying to play catch up to everything that is re-implemented every month and then has a million blog posts about it and how you can redo with this router in this version, like just use a router, just use a server. It's called a client server. How much time do I have left?
Oh, I stopped running the timer because you guys just didn't even care. So I'm just listening now. Nick's just like trying to fill time. I'm not even keeping track right now. So I guess you can just stop right there. KBall, I'll allow one response and then we'll call it the end of this segment.
My response is, y'all may be willing to wait for the bureaucratic process that is involved in updating standards and creating browsers, browser change and all of this to happen before you solve your user problems. But I got users and they need their problem solved, and I'll use the tools available to me today. And oftentimes
Just hope
that
they don't hit the
involves a
back
spa.
button.
You
All right,
keep
that-
using that straw man argument as if there are not spas where back button functionality works.
Oh, you should point to us to some.
Yeah, please show us an example.
All right, thus ends our official debate. We'll come back on the other side of the break, and we can talk freely about what we actually believe about these things versus what we've been assigned to argue. So stay tuned, and we'll hear what actually people think. I think in terms of winning, of course, the only way to win is to not participate. I'm the only one who did that, so I do win. But coming in a close second with the form reform, thank you, Robert Hall, in the chat room for giving it a name. Divya's argument about forms is the winning argument of the day. And so Divya takes a close second place.
Yay.
Everybody else, thank you for participating. We'll be right back. Sorry, Nick, I
I'm
had to give it to
disappointed
her
I
by
didn't bring
herself.
that in the beginning.
Please.
That would have just automatically won.
That was good.
Let's
Form
wait to the
reform.
end. Form reform. But in all seriousness, we definitely need better forms.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Well, I mean, thankfully there aren't very many of them, on the web. Like, there's only like one per page or more. Okay, should we go back in and talk freeform? Talk about what our actual fields?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, great debate, y'all. KBall, you made some interesting points. Did you believe anything you were talking about, or are you just talking?
Mostly just talking, but I mean, so here's the thing. Spas can make sense for particular types of applications, right? Like if you're doing like a Slack web application, or you're trying to do Figma, which I used, right? Like a spa makes a ton of sense for that type of situation. The real issue is that they became the hammer that we threw at every single nail. There are very, very large numbers of applications for which they don't make sense. And I really like some of the new progress and Remix is doing some of this and other things where folks are actually trying to maintain that ease of programming interactivity while getting back some of the nicer features that you get with server rendered applications.
Mm-hmm. Now, Nick, KBall pointed out what was one of his strongest points was the hypocrisy of your argumentation, which is why I assigned you on that team, is that you almost entirely only build single-page apps, right? I mean, day to day.
Yep.
So you don't actually think they're a big mistake, or you just...
Oh, no, I do.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay. So you're just making a big mistake every day.
No. I think that in a lot of ways, we do overcomplicate everything. And we do have to re-architect a lot of stuff. And it's just a lot more that's put on my plate to maintain and make sure it's working when I could be off solving more important problems. But I do think that they have their place for sure. I do like working with them. And I do think that in general, like there's like take right now, we're recording this podcast in a web app and it's on a single page and it works fantastically. And if we wanted to bring in another guest, guess what they don't have to do? They don't have to download a single thing or set anything up. They just have to do a complicated process of using a Chromium browser and giving it a lot of permissions for things, but it does still work, which is really quite impressive. And, it's been practically flawless, which is really
so
a good
for the listener, we use riverside.fm to record, which provides us all video, streaming, recording, etc., participation in this chat room, the soundboard. It's all in one spot. That being said, this is a bit of a hybrid application because we are in the studio, and the studio is this web application that's all right here on one page. But then when you go to the recordings, it's just its own separate page. When you go back to the list of your different studios, it's its own separate page. And so it's not like all of riverside.fm is one single page. It's like we have this rich web app in here that has its own tabs and stuff that don't reload the page. But when you go beyond that, it is multiple pages. So it's a bit of a hybrid. And I think a lot of times that makes a lot of sense. Divya, you argued that single page apps were a big mistake. Do you believe that?
I think it's very... I mean, I think in general it's just been misused. It's sort of like the argument that was made around
It became the de facto way, right?
What was that?
It kind of became the de facto way that people started.
Yeah, exactly.
Like actually making the decision up front.
It's just a matter of like everyone was given this tool, like this crazy jackhammer, and then everyone started using it for tiny things. They're like, oh, I need to remove my backsplash. Let me just use this jackhammer to remove the tiling. I think that's how jackhammers work. I don't know. I've never used one. I've just used tiny hammers. And so the problem is that we gave people a tool, and I think when single page apps were created, they weren't even like this fixes everything. It was not, but everyone used it like to fix everything or to build everything, which I think became a problem because now apps became really bloated. People are re-implementing part of the web that did things already, like back buttons, browser history. We were just like redoing it over and over again. And that became a huge problem. And I think there are certain use cases I agree. Like if you wanted Figma, I think VS Code has like a web thing now, and that's a single page app as well. Like you can't build that as a multi-page app. That would be, I think it would be horrible. But those are very specific instances, and I think like Dustin in the chat talked about, or he was like, the comment was, is it valuable to distinguish local first software versus spas? And in a way I kind of feel like, and the discussion so far has just been around the development type, so I kind of feel like Figma and VS Code and all of these things are very specific kinds of development, and they're very specific use cases because they require like heavy user interaction, and you have to sometimes allow multiple sessions, like people working on, like Google Docs, for example, has like CRDT. There's a lot of things that you're dealing with, and those, there are reasons to use a single page app for them because the problem area is so vast and the interaction is very specific. But if you're building like a blog or something much smaller, then a single page app is like way too much and not really what you should be building, in my opinion. So yeah, it's like very specific to the use case, I would say. I feel like every time we do a yup note, we just end up here.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
it
I mean, that's engineering,
depends.
right? Engineering
Right.
is all about trade-offs. There are no
Yeah.
absolutes
Yeah.
in engineering. I think
Yeah.
Figma, your point about local is an interesting one, right? So Figma, they have local applications using Electron, right? They're actually
Yeah.
embedding their single page app, and that's, you know, a multi-page app doesn't really work in that kind of embedding. Like one of the really interesting things that the single page approach kind of enables is you can take the same application and package it up in these sort of native wrappers. And
Yeah.
is that as good as creating individual distinct native implementations using whatever those native, you know, packages prefer? I don't know, but for many cases it's good enough, and it facilitates giving these capabilities while lowering your development burden quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sorry. I think the cross-platform argument is interesting because the like tools like Electron, and then I think there's more newer ones too. Like there's a Rust one, I forget what it's called. It's like Tori or something. But it's just like a way in which you can not have to change your development environment, and you build across for like a desktop app, mobile, and web, which I think is honestly, from a development cost perspective, better because then you don't have to have separate teams. But again, not every app needs to be cross-platform, right? Like Figma, for example, is a great use case. VS Code is a good use case. Like these are things in which people want them across platforms. But again, like if you're building, I don't
Yeah.
know, if you're building just like a small blog, or if you're building like a podcast app thing, do you really need it to be cross-platform? Can you just use it on one platform? So you could argue there's a lot of different avenues for that.
Cross-platform is interesting. The other thing that's interesting that I thought would have gotten brought up for on KBall's pro side is that multi-client. So this was actually one of the things that Tom Preston Warner really made an emphasis on last time he was on the show. By the way, he's coming up here soon to talk about Redwood 1.0. Was that division with a single page application and client-side rendering? You have the division between the API and the client, and that architecture sets you up and forces you as a team or an organization to set you up for multiple clients. Whereas when you go down the road on a multi-page app with server-side rendering, or sometimes you're doing static, whichever way you're doing it, you're more likely to mix those concerns and not have that firm contract of here's my JSON API and here's my SPA. And that can back you into a corner when it's like all of a sudden, hey, we want a command line app. Hey, we want a iOS app. Hey, we want a public API. And so teams that are trying to be economical, actually, sometimes the argument is we should do an SPA because it's more economical over the long term, even though it's less so getting started.
Yeah, that did come up in one of the quotes
Oh.
that I
They were
that-
rapid
it was,
fire.
it
I
was
must have
lost
missed it.
in the general
There was
ridicule
a lot
around
of
the quotes. I
Fair
just
enough.
I've always loved that original Faraz take of I'm going to appeal to authority and read some
And
quotes.
read some quotes.
I remember that. Yeah.
It's
was
funny because I
amazing.
just recently redid our trailer just because it's been a couple years and people have come and gone and I wanted to be fresh. But that old quote from Faraz, it was on the old
So
trailer
good.
and I brought it into the new trailer
It's
too because it's
so
just
good.
such a funny moment.
Um, one of the things that we're starting to see, I think, is even in like even if you're separating your front end, like having some amount of server rendering and server side logic there, and it gets you some of that capability that you're talking about without necessarily having to go all the way to a spa. And even frameworks like Remix, which I'm going to bring up again because they're doing kind of interesting stuff here, right? Like they're doing all of their rendering on the server, but their architecture is set up. It's still a separated front end. It expects there to be a back-end API that lives separately.
And
Yeah.
from a developer's perspective, you don't really have to think about that too much, right? You just provide the data in the way that you need or the way that it defines. I haven't used Remix yet, but and then you can reload the page there and it'll be fine, or you can navigate in a single page way and it'll also be fine.
Yeah, it hides that away and gives you like a nice little what they call a bridge over the network chasm.
Yeah. I think it's cool. I think I might have mentioned this in a previous episode, but just the architecture around what is possible on the web and like platforms and how we deploy things has also changed a lot. And so you no longer like single page apps were at a point when you really wanted to not have you wanted to prevent that round trip constantly because you're just like load it quickly because you didn't have access to a lot of servers. It was like servers were in certain locations. It was like US East, Asia had one. Like it was in certain parts. And so when someone loaded, yeah, the initial load time was long, but then subsequent loads were fast because everything's already there. But now you have a lot of really cool technology and platforms that give you access to multi-region deployments. And it makes it much faster and much easier to work with. And so you can do a lot of like kind of hybrid type approaches. And you can do some server-side rendering if you wanted to without having to incur again like that crazy round trip times. Because it like you'll still need a server round trip, but in terms of where the server is located, it's probably going to be closer to you now than it was like 10 or 20 years ago.
For sure.
Totally. Edge compute and having like edge side, like server side rendering just completely changes all the trade-offs you have there. And even if you're going back to a centralized database, though some of the edge compute platforms, like I feel like I was reading like fly.io will like propagate your data out too. Like there's all sorts of fun stuff.
Disclaimer: Divya works at Fly.
I do work there.
Oh. Well,
She'll tell you all about it. No.
I try not to bring up where I work sometimes because I feel like I'm super biased, but yeah.
Well, so is that
It's
correct
reality.
that it's propagating the data out to the
We
edge
do
as well?
propagate some of the data, yeah.
So
There is parts of that.
That creates like a totally different world in terms of the trade-offs that you need to make about the network then.
Yeah.
So here is a question around the premise. One more question. So SPAs were a big mistake. It seems like sometimes they might be a mistake. If we think about like an individual team or person making a choice, like sometimes it might be a mistake to choose that. Sometimes it might be the right choice. I think we can all name certain applications where we're like, yes, SPA made a lot of sense for Gmail. It made a lot of sense for Trello, etc. But as an industry as a whole, like this pendulum swing, which we tend to go back and forth between different things, was that direction that we went on, which may have been a 5 or 10 year direction. And I think Divya, you kind of touched on this with your argument around think how good forms could be. Do you think as a whole, like the browsers facilitating features for the needs of SPAs and like this pendulum swing towards, and now we're kind of starting to swing back the other direction. Do you think that whole thing was a waste of time, or do you think that we had profit or there's benefits from
I kind
going
of
that
feel
direction?
like, I mean, it's hard to say. It's really hard to say, but yeah, like there are parts of it that feel like a waste of time. Like we are reinventing things or we're creating interactions that people expected. But at the same time, I sort of, it's yeah, the industry is constantly in flux. Like there's always things that come up and then go. Like full stack apps, the whole like Rails and build everything in Rails was like a whole thing in like the early 2000s. And Node.js, you can still build things in Node pretty well. But anyway, aside from that,
And Rails.
it's
You can
just
still build things in Rails pretty
You-
well. Yeah.
you. I don't really want to go there. I disagree. But mainly
Here's
because
our next debate.
I don't know. Bring on DHH to like argue for Rails.
Well,
Maybe.
you
Well,
know
so
which
I
side
feel
he's on.
like DHH, being the sort of disaster that he is, hides a lot of the real value that still is there in the framework and the community beyond him.
Yeah, I think there's definitely. I mean, I can see that. I think I'm again like very biased because I'm working on a Rails app and it's really clunky and the experience is horrible, and I dislike it.
Modern Rails or legacy Rails?
It's not legacy. It's not
Okay.
legacy. I
The
forget which
reason why I
version
ask
we're
is
on.
because
We're
I
up-
actually haven't done a modern Rails, but I have fond recollections of Rails 6, like 4 through
Okay.
6.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure what it looks like today, but it was very productive for a very long time, and I expect it to stay that way, but maybe it's gotten clunky. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not. We're not using super legacy stuff, but I'm working with like GraphQL things in Rails, and it's just painful overall. Because it's just it's just clunky for what it is. I would have rather written in TypeScript or something better. Yeah.
You say that because you're on next team. The debate's over, dude. You
What?
don't have to.
No,
It's up to
it's
Nick.
just that I don't like writing Ruby. Every time I have to write a new query or
understand that.
mutation, I have to write Ruby. I
Yeah,
don't
I
like
understand
that.
Oh, so
You'd
it's
rather
just
write
like in the
TypeScript than
language, not
Ruby?
the framework.
Yes, of course.
I'm
that's-
personally offended at this point.
Yeah. Okay, so we found your bias there. Um, other than performance, I feel like Ruby is such a great language.
I concur. Like it just in terms of just the joy of using it, but maybe that's because I've used it for a long time.
I do want to actually dig in a little bit more on your question there, Jerod, about the
Please do.
direction. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I went a little over the top in the debate on this, but I actually do believe that the sort of user space innovation as a push towards direction for platforms is really important. And it's something that we have seen, you know, in OS land and things like that as well, right? Like things that go into the platform or the kernel of necessity must move slower because they must maintain backwards compatibility. There's all sorts of stability needs and things like that. And so the place for really fertile innovation and exploration is in user space. And then that then is a very good indicator to the browser of where or the platform vendor of where the important areas are. And so I think, you know, this approach of lots of stuff gets tried in user space, and some of it will be a disaster and some of it will not. But the things that become very successful are then those things that start to get absorbed into the platform, and the platform makes those easier. And so I think there are things from the SPA period that were probably mistakes and probably misdirections, but there's also an awful lot of valuable innovation and exploration that happened there. And I don't think we would be nearly in the place that we are in terms of things like Houdini, in terms of things like Canvas, in terms of all these things that are enabling these massively interesting and powerful applications to live in browsers, if the SPA period had not happened.
Yeah, I wonder if Wasm wouldn't have like moved forward without that too. Because like now you can do crazy stuff with Wasm.
Yeah.
And that's like what Figma is doing, right? I
Yeah.
assume.
Yeah,
I
I
think
was
they're
looking
doing
into
things with-
their job postings. They're writing their stuff in C++.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super
these-
low level.
Wild browser apps. That's awesome.
Right.
It's also like
it,
I mean,
though?
you can have the application piece that's just there living on a single page, but then when you go to the gallery view or whatever, that's another page. Like there's
Totally.
a
You can
hybrid
mix and
that
match. Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things is there's so much choice, but one of the hard parts is there's so much choice, and so often we are lazy or strapped on time or don't have all the information, and we're like, just tell me what's best. Just tell me what to do, which is why these debate episodes are fun, because of course they have a harsh premise that can either be a yes or a no, But at the end of the debate, you know that there's a lot of it depends, and the actual conversation around it is the interesting part. The debates are fun, but I always like the third segment best because we can discuss all of those in between spots. If you enjoyed this debate episode, we've done this. It's our 5th one. So go back into the feed. You'll find different arguments. Are web apps fundamentally different than websites? Should websites work without JavaScript? Is modern JavaScript tooling too complicated? And should we rebrand JavaScript, which was a fun one for sure. KBall mentioned Remix a couple times on this show. Reminds me it is time for our new segment, Holla. Oh, it's not giving me monoways. Single page app. Broke.
Where's the holla sound?
The Holla sound's not here. Splice it in right here. Holla at RemixConf. RemixConf right around the corner, May 24th and 25th in Salt Lake City. And we do not have a for sure plan, but we believe JS Party will be involved at RemixConf. So if you are thinking of going and you want to come see us, hang out with us, we will most likely be there. I'm hedging, but it'll probably happen. And so do that. Come to RemixConf and come see us. It's May 24th, 25th. Again, Salt Lake City. So check it out, remix.run/conf. All right, y'all. This is our episode. KBall, Nick, Divya, any final words before we call today?
It's been too long
You
since
win.
I went to the other kind of spa. You've made me miss it.
The winner
Go
of this
to-
debate episode gets a free spa on us.
You have to go to the
Congrats,
Korean
Jerod.
spas. Those are the good ones.
Oh,
Some of them are all inclusive. You get a massage, you can go to the hot tub, and then there's usually a restaurant. And then if you don't want to go home, they have a hotel. It's like all
Seriously?
inclusive. Yeah.
that really is all inclusive. That's like spa and breakfast.
It's like a adult amusement park, I guess. I just I don't know what to call
That's
it.
good branding. Should we rebrand Korean spas to adult amusement parks?
I don't know if you want that branding.
I don't know. It was your idea. we could debate it.
I didn't say special services were included. That was not.
You said all inclusive, so I assume. Hey, listen up. If you have a cool premise for another Yep Nope episode, let us know. We would love to compile more groups of debaters and find out who is the master debater. Okay, I have to end this episode now before I get myself in trouble. I'm Jerod Santo on
Oh.
behalf of KBall, Nick, and Divya. What?
No, go ahead.
Oh, you said, oh, like you were going to say.
Oh, I wanted to add something at the like after you're done. I
Okay.
thought you were done, but please
Okay.
continue.
On behalf of
Oh!
On behalf of KBall, Nick, and Divya, I'm Jerod, and this has been JS Party, and we'll talk to you next time. Go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were gonna play the outro music.
It's broken. It's broken.
Oh yeah.
Oh, no.
Do your thing. What are you going to do?
No, did you? No, I was saying for a future Yup Note, we can do what? Did you see Zach's tweet about people don't get paid to work on static site generators? Feels like these are the real developers, or real developers don't work on static site generators.
Oh, it's like the new way of belittling people or something?
Yeah, I don't know. That maybe seems like a controversial opinion, but yeah,
State that in a form that we could actually debate it.
real developers don't work on static
Static
site
site
generators.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good one. Really?
Bring Zach on.
Yeah. Oh, funny. Dustin says, yep, nope, wasm. Well, what's the actual premise, Dustin? We have to have a premise. Oh, through it.
Wasm was a mistake.
Wasm was a mistake. Wasm will never.
Wasm wasn't a
Oh, how-
mistake. Wasm.
One we could do. Wasm will get rid of, or Wasm will eliminate JavaScript.
Mm.
Ooh, is JavaScript obsolete? Yep, nope.
Is JavaScript obsolete? Well, like it has to have a future casting because.
Or will JavaScript become obsolete?
Is
With Wasm?
JavaScript
So like
dead?
KBall's thing, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Will Wasm replace JavaScript, or not replace it?
It's not.
Anyway,
I mean,
this has
because
been
Wasm
fun,
is
y'all,
like.
but I gotta roll.
We gotta hustle.
Okay.
All right.
Same.
Yeah.
We can talk about this offline. Keep it going in the chat room if y'all have good ideas. Thanks for
Take
hanging
care,
out,
y'all.
everybody. And